Hello dear students, let's discuss the topic structure and functions of brain in pigeon. I am Dr. E. Harini, selection grade lecturer and HOD Department of Zoology, St. Joseph's College for Women Autonomous, Vishakhapatnam. The learning outcomes are identify the major parts of the pigeon's brain including the forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Describe the functions of the different regions of the brain. Explain how the brain of pigeon helps in its coordination, balance and flight. Be able to compare the brain structure of pigeon with that of the other vertebrates to understand the evolutionary adaptations. Coming to the structure of brain in pigeon. Birds possess good sense organs and a high sense of intelligence which demand a good central nervous system. The brain of birds is much more highly developed than that of reptiles and is relatively largest next to those of mammals. This is the image showing the brain of pigeon. You can see the olfactory lobes, the cerebral hemispheres, the optic lobes, the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata in both the dorsal and the ventral view. The brain of pigeon is relatively larger than in the lower forms, but in shape it is short, broad, rounded in form and whitish in color. It completely fills the roomy cranial cavity. It is covered by two protective membranes or meninges, an outer durameter of connective tissue, and an inner pia-arachnoid rich in blood supply. The narrow space between the two meninges has connective and fatty tissues, veins, and cerebrospinal fluid. The brain is divisible into forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain consists of the olfactory lobes and the cerebral hemispheres. The olfactory lobes or the olfactory bulbs are extremely small and degenerate due to the poorly developed organs of smell. But in apteryx, the olfactory chamber is highly developed, extending from the tip of the beak to the level of the optic foramina. The cerebral hemispheres are pyriform, large-sized, convex, and separated by a deep sagittal fissure. The cerebral hemispheres are relatively smooth and lack the characteristic fissures of the mammalian brain and reach the cerebellum posteriorly. The cerebral hemispheres consist of the developed corpus striatum, which is composed of the solid mass of tissue. The roof of the cerebral hemispheres is called neopallium, which is unconvoluted. The hemispheres overhang posteriorly, concealing the dorsal surface of the diencephalon completely. At the posterior end of the deep sagittal fissure, separating the two hemispheres, lies the single delicate small median pineal body. On the ventral surface of the visible diencephalon, the two prominent and large optic nerves cross each other, forming the optic chiasma. Behind the chiasma projects a median process, the infundibulum, bearing a large hypophysis or pituitary gland which lacks the intermediate lobe. The midbrain consists of two rounded optic lobes which are conspicuously developed. The midbrain is highly developed due to the keen sense of sight of the birds, with two large well-developed optic lobes. These are lateral in position because they have been pressed outwards by the cerebral hemispheres, which meet posteriorly with the cerebellum. Both optic lobes remain connected by a transverse optic commissure. The hindbrain consists of the cerebellum and medulla oblongata. The cerebellum is highly developed, large, folded, and extends forwards. It is divisible into a large median lobe or vermis and two small conical lateral lobes or floculi. The vermis has transverse grooves forming folds and ridges so that the superficial gray matter is greatly increased in extent. The convoluted cerebellum indicates the delicate sense of equilibrium and the great power of muscular coordination belonging to birds. The medulla oblongata of the hindbrain is concealed beneath the cerebellum, descends almost vertically from it to join the spinal cord. It is broader in front and tapers behind to merge into the spinal cord. At the point of junction of medulla oblongata and spinal cord occurs a well-marked ventral flexure as in the lizards. Coming to the internal structure and the cavities of the brain. The brain is a hollow organ and its cavities are called ventricles. Each major division of the pigeon's brain has greatly reduced ventricles. The two cavities of the cerebral hemispheres are called lateral ventricles or the paraseals. The roof or pallium is thin and not folded, and there is very little development of cerebral cortex like the reptiles. The ventrolateral walls of the cerebral hemispheres are very thick and they are formed of corpora striata or hyperstriatum. The instinctive behavior and the ability to maneuver flight are largely due to the enormous development of the corpora striata in the cerebrum and an equally great development of the cerebellum. An anterior commissure interconnects the corpora striata of the two hemispheres. Posteriorly, each lateral ventricle communicates by a small common aperture, the foramen of Monro, with the narrow vertical cavity of the diencephalon, termed the third ventricle or the diaceal. Its thin roof is called epithalamus, which contains a richly vascular tissue, the anterior choroid plexus just in front of the pineal body, while its thick floor is termed hypothalamus. The posterior commissure separates the diaceal from the narrow cavity of the midbrain called the iter, and the thick long bands of the nerve fibers forming the crura cerebri run beneath the optic lobes and connect the diencephalon with the medulla oblongata. The cavity of the medulla oblongata is called the fourth ventricle or the metaceal. Its roof is thin, highly vascular, called the posterior choroid plexus, and its sides and floor are thick-walled. The anterior and posterior choroid plexus secretes the cerebrospinal fluid, which fills in the ventricles of the brain. The ventricles of the brain contain the cerebrospinal fluid secreted by the choroid plexus. Histologically, the brain has a layer of gray matter containing the nerve cells, a layer of white matter containing the nerve fibers. The gray matter is external in the olfactory lobes, cerebral hemispheres, diencephalon, and cerebellum, while it is internal in the optic lobes and medulla oblongata. The functions of the different parts of the brain are as following. The olfactory lobes are concerned with the smell. The cerebral hemispheres with the voluntary movement or conditioned reflexes like intelligence, will, memory, emotions, etc. The corpora striata are concerned in the control of the reflex behavior governing the lives of birds such as eating, locomotion, copulation, nesting, and care of the young. The diencephalon relays impulses to the cerebral hemispheres integrating the center of the autonomic system and perception of extreme cold, heat, pain, etc. The optic lobes are concerned with the sense of sight, which is greatly developed in the birds, the crura cerebri conduction of sensory impulses, the cerebellum in the voluntary movements and balance, equilibrium, and the medulla oblongata in the involuntary movements. The spinal cord or nerve cord is the continuation of the medulla oblongata. It is reduced in length, and this is because the spinal cord is short due to the short vertebral column in birds. It is similar in structure as in the other vertebrates and is covered by the same membranes as the brain. The central canal of the spinal cord is continuous with the cavity of the medulla and filled with the cerebrospinal fluid. Histologically, it is formed of an inner head-shaped gray matter and an outer white matter. The spinal cord controls reflex activity and serves to conduct impulses to and from the brain. The summary. The special features are the pigeon brain is a fine example of avian evolution, showing special adaptations for flight, visual accuracy, and coordination. Though smell is less important, vision and movement control are highly advanced. The large cerebrum for intelligence, they have large optic lobes for vision, the large cerebellum for motor control, and the small olfactory lobes due to the less dependence on smell. Thank you.